Bitcoin's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, is probably this unknown Australian genius, blares the headline at Wired.com. And for those who haven't seen this report posted up yesterday, they do claim to have found, or at least tentatively, maybe kind of could have found, the creator of Bitcoin, the mysterious Satoshi Nakamoto, and he is a 44-year-old Australian entrepreneur named Craig Stephen Wright, or so they are alleging. And, well, the report is quite detailed, and let's take it with a huge grain of salt for anyone who remembers Newsweek's debacle where they claimed to have found maybe this is Satoshi Nakamoto, and it turned out not to be him at all. And that blew up in Newsweek's face. So let's take this report with a grain of salt. But they do provide some evidence for their assertion here, some of which is quite circumstantial. An August 2008 post on his blog, months before the November 2008 introduction of the Bitcoin white paper on a cryptography mailing list, announcing that there would be a cryptocurrency paper using triple entry accounting forthcoming. So that's a pretty tentative, circumstantial piece of evidence. More to the point, apparently a blog post using a PGP public key, which was apparently linked to Satoshi Nakamoto when they checked the database of the MIT server where the key was stored. It was associated with an email address that was one letter different than the address that was used by Nakamoto to post the white paper to the cryptography mailing list. They have some other pieces of the puzzle here, like a deleted blog entry announcing the release of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going live tomorrow. This is decentralized. We'll try it until it works. Interestingly posted on 10th of January 2009, but Bitcoin actually went live on the 9th of January. But that's 9th of January Eastern Standard Time in the United States. And if he was in Australia, then the time zones might make account for that difference. And all of this kind of, legwork that has been done to try to see if this guy is associated. And there's a good case to be made, but again, I'll let you read through that and come to your own conclusion whether this is in fact Satoshi Nakamoto. But regardless, whoever he is, he's just had his home raided by Australian police, his home and his office. Bitcoin creator identified by Wired has Australian home raided. So less than 24 hours after the Wired report appears, the Australian Federal Police are raiding his home and his office. But according to the AFP, their presence at Mr. Wright's property is not associated with the media reporting overnight about Bitcoins. Yeah, sure, just out of the blue, let's raid this guy. So there's some obvious shenanigans going on here, and it looks like more of the demonization that I think we should know is just par for the course here for anything that goes against or outside or around the system in the peer-to-peer economy that we've talked about before here on the program. But for those who need a reminder of just some of the latest pieces of that puzzle, of course, after the November 13th Paris terror attacks, we had group claims Bitcoin may have been used to fund Paris terrorist attacks, where it's talking about this ghost security group, an offshoot of Anonymous, who describe themselves as a counterterrorism network that combats extremism on the digital front lines and disrupts ISIS social media accounts and all of that jazz. Basically talking about how they had detected several indications of an impending attack prior to Friday's multiple terrorist strikes across Paris, but I guess they didn't bother to warn anyone about that. And then they go on more generally to say the Islamic State uses cryptocurrencies as a form of income to fund their ongoing operations, and we have managed to uncover several Bitcoin addresses used by them, and they're on the deep web, but we've uncovered their accounts and shut them down, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of fear-mongering, Bitcoin, terrorism. Oh, how dare people use a currency that isn't created out of debt by a central bank owned by the private banksters under the thumb of a tyrannical government. How dare you try to go outside the system like that? Be afraid. Terror. And, of course, just coincidentally, the European Commission, just a couple of days after that, released a memo talking about how they had a publication coming out that was examining Bitcoin's role in terrorist financing, supposedly unrelated to the attacks of Paris. It had been planned for months, but coming out just a few days later. Again, Bitcoin terror, Bitcoin terror, Bitcoin terror. It doesn't really matter that the Bitcoin, Paris, and terrorism reporting got a lot of facts wrong, as this Coindesk.com article points out and goes through some of the actual details of these supposed linkages, including the director of FinCEN, the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crime Enforcement Network, Jennifer Shansky-Calvary, who said that there has been public reporting of connections of ISIL promoting the use of Bitcoin and virtual currencies as a means of moving and raising funds. But I think we are also very focused on the traditional means of moving funds, so I think we need to keep our focus on both areas. I.e., yeah, they still use cash to buy things as well, and whatever else, whatever other ways they use to transfer money, but of course, that gets transformed in the headlines, like the American Banker, to ISIL may be using Bitcoin, FinCEN's Calvary says. Well, again, it's taking the comment completely wrong. But that's the type of reporting we've been getting on Bitcoin and really anything to do with the peer-to-peer economy lately. And, well, again, it's just is reinforced. No matter how many times these types of things are debunked, they come back again. Bitcoin report, ISIS utilizing digital currency to fund terror operations, conceal cash. Whatever that means, conceal cash, yes. And again, the Ghost Security Group. So again, this anonymous group that, could be anyone, including whatever alphabet soup, three-letter intelligence agency wants to claim it is anonymous, is going around talking about how the, terror, Bitcoin terror. So there you go, folks. And for those who think that this is only something that affects Bitcoin, and for people who think Bitcoin is the mark of the beast or whatever it is that people think it is, well, if you want gold-backed currency as well, you better watch out, because guess what? Ghost Security Group spokesman Michael Smith II said that counter-terror officials are concerned that the Islamic State is receiving gold and other large volumes of monetary instruments like virtual cash to carry out their nefarious plans. So, again, gold, Bitcoin, anything that is not this funny money, fiat, debt-based slave currency issued by central banks must be a terror currency because it cannot be tracked and traced and controlled at all times. So the narrative, of course, once again, freedom, terrible freedom. We must stamp it out. We must have total control over every interaction. We must see everything that happens. We must have total control over it. Otherwise, terror. Well, just continuing that trend, unfortunately, this just out today. California shooters borrowed $28,000 before attack. Source. And this is talking about apparently a $28,000 loan that these suspects in the San Bernardino shooting apparently took out. And the San Bernardino shooting and all of the anomalies and craziness surrounding it, showing that it is likely, like a lot of these other attacks, phonier than a $3 bill, with now witnesses coming out saying there were 3 attackers and they were white men. And but who cares about that? It's clearly this mother who abandoned her infant baby to go on a shooting rampage with guns that no one is saying where they actually got the assault weapons they were using. But anyway, all of that aside, $28,000 from an online lender, and guess what? Disclosure of the unsecured loan the husband, Saeed Rizwan Farouk, 28, took out from San Francisco-based Prosper, a peer-to-peer lending service, offered a new glimpse into the money trail under scrutiny by investigators of last week's mass shooting. So, again, this is being put out as if it's really important. The interesting thing is this article really doesn't make very much of the fact that Prosper is a peer-to-peer lending service, but interestingly enough, Zero Hedge does. They put that front and center, meet the peer-to-peer lending website that funded the San Bernardino shooters, just swallowing the official San Bernardino story, hook, line, and sinker. And yes, it goes on to really talk in great length about Prosper and its business model and how it works. And for people who don't know about peer-to-peer lending services match investors to borrowers directly to each other, and then the loans are taken out and sent to the borrower, and they pay back, and everyone's happy, right? Unless it's being used to fund terrorism. And it's just a bizarre article, really, from Zero Hedge that goes on to say, we'll simply leave you with 2 images, the first from Prosper's website, and the second from the aftermath of Farouk and Malik's shootout with police. Here's what the pictures have in common: a husband, a wife, a car, and Prosper. We'll leave it to readers to spot the differences. And look, personal loans just got easier through Prosper. And here's what it leads to: terrorism. Oh, we can't have people interacting with each other directly through the peer-to-peer economy. What horror that could bring. People might use that money to do terrorist acts. Of course, people can get loans through banks to do things, to appropriate that money for terrorist acts as well. But let's not talk about that. It's clearly peer-to-peer. Peer-to-peer, we must shut this down. So who is afraid of the peer-to-peer economy? Well, of course, the status quo economy is very much afraid of it. And for people who don't know about the peer-to-peer economy, what it is, why it's revolutionary, how it's being cracked down on, why it's important that people at least start to explore the possibilities that it provides, I'll provide a link to Solutions, the Peer-to-Peer Economy, episode 303 of the Corbett Report podcast. Transcript is up online, the video, the audio. So I hope you will go and check that out because, again, I think this is an extremely important concept that, at least right now, this brief window of opportunity is feasible. The idea of people actually free individual human beings interacting freely with each other across vast distances, coming together to transact and interact directly without the need for central banks and governments and regulators. Can you imagine? Oh, freedom, terrible freedom, terror, Bitcoin, peer-to-peer lending, be afraid. This is what it looks like. Oh, death, carnage. Don't give in to the fear. Don't give in to the hype. Just go and check the facts for yourselves. All of these articles and all of the information will be linked up in the show notes as always. That's it for today. James Corbett, CorbettReport.com.